without disclosing too much, I just remember being involved in different hustles, I guess you could say, where I acquired cash. And I just remember coming to a point in my life where my mother would come to me for money. And I would just, you know, get in my little tin or jar and just hand it to her. And because I knew at an early age that money was really important to her, just feeling like she loved money more than me. Mm-hmm. And then when I had money, I felt like she loved me, but I also felt powerful. And it was something we didn't tell my father because, of course, I could tell him because I'd have to explain why I have money, and she wouldn't tell him because then he would have to ask her, why are you asking your 16, 17-year-old daughter for money? And that's when I felt like I was grown up, where I felt like I had this power, and my mother needed me.
I don't remember actually ever thinking I'm grown. I don't remember thinking that. Looking back, I know when I was at college, I felt more grown, you know, because I was living on my own, kind of, for the most part. Not really. My parents were still paying for everything, but but I was away from them and, you know, I'm not under their watchful eyes. So I think looking back, that's when I thought I was an adult now, even though I was still really not.
I think the first experiences where I started to feel grown, I can relate to you, where I don't think there were these moments where I was like, well, now I'm grown. I always felt kind of like a kid, but there were definitely these moments where I started to really develop almost a secret life from my parents. So there was like a whole life that I was living that they didn't know about, and that was like partying with friends and smoking cigarettes, or like my parents traveled a lot, and when they were gone we'd have these big parties, and there was no way that we could talk to anybody about what we were doing because then we'd get in trouble, right? So we had to like have our own system for handling all of that, and you know, going to the liquor store and buying cigarettes and doing things like that, I think were probably the first times when I really was kind of like, oh, I've got my own little thing going here. But then a lot of fear would go with that because I would get myself into these situations where I'd get in, where I was unsafe. And I felt like, well, now I'm going to have to blow my cover and everybody else's cover if I want to get help. And so I would just hide out. So that was not a very healthy experience of being independent because it was all very secretive.
I think that I felt like I was grown at 17. And that's because I was doing my own thing. I was getting ready to graduate from high school. I was wildly in love with this young boy, and we were going to move off to New York and have this life together. And so 17 is when I felt like I was grown. However, I didn't feel like a kid. I didn't feel like a kid for the rest of that time, from 7 to 17. So I had some sexual trauma that happened when I was 7. So I didn't feel like a kid, but I felt like I had adult responsibilities to hold on to the secret. And then also in our household, my parents, both of them worked the second shift. So I had to come straight home from school and babysit and make sure my brother ate, make sure he did his homework, I did my homework. So I felt like I wasn't an adult, but I didn't feel like a kid either. So I was like a weird in between, and I don't have a word for it, but I just didn't feel like a kid from 7 to 17. And then at 17, you know, once I was ready to leave the house and run off to New York with my boyfriend and start this life that I had been dreaming about for all those years, that's when I finally felt free enough to be an adult, or free enough to be grown, I guess.